Hey everybody, welcome back. We're going to be talking about the relationship between states and the federal government, which is another way to say that we're talking about federalism. One of the most important sections in this unit. Be sure to smash that like button and have your notes ready to go. Federalism is the division of power between the federal, states, and local governments. It's a pretty unique system where we have lots of different people making laws and telling us what we can't do. But each government only has powers over certain things because the Constitution established shared sovereignty. So it depends on the issue whether the states or federal government is in charge. In a unitary system, the federal government would have full sovereignty, and the states would be like its little minions. And in a confederacy, like under the Articles, the states would be sovereign. The federal solution is a more nuanced, but it's also a little bit more complicated than those two rejected ideas. Delegated powers are powers given to the federal government. It's helpful to remember that the states existed before the federal government. The states created the federal government. Therefore, they gave or delegated some powers to the federal government. These include things like declaring war, making treaties, coining money. These are things that only the federal government can do and are sometimes called exclusive powers. The powers states kept for themselves are known as reserved powers. Reserved powers include things that are not mentioned in the Constitution specifically. So they're in charge of things like education, health, welfare, licensing, and a general police power. These are all reserved to the states. And if you're thinking, hey, aren't there federal education, health, and welfare programs? Well, you, my friend, are not wrong. Keep watching and I'll tell you exactly how that happened. Concurrent powers are powers that they both have, so both the federal government and states can do these things, like taxing and borrowing money, making laws, and building roads. Please note that they exercise these powers separately, but they can both separately tax you, for instance. The thing is, this relationship between states and the federal government has changed over time. And for that reason, it can be described as dynamic federalism. Trust me, the AP exam loves to focus on anything that changes, so that makes this section a good bet for test questions. For the first 140 years or so, federalism in the US could best be described as dual federalism, which is sometimes called layer cake federalism. The idea is simple. Just like on a layer cake where you can see clearly where one layer ends and one begins, with dual federalism, it's clear what's a state issue and what's a federal issue. There's no overlap. They are each separate and supreme in their own spheres. If it's delegated like foreign policy stuff or currency, it's the federal's power. If it's not mentioned, it's up to the states. Since FDR and the New Deal, we have something more like cooperative federalism. And yeah, there's a cake for this one too, marble cake federalism. With a marble cake, the different flavors are swirled together, and it's tough to get a bite that doesn't have both flavors. That's kind of like federalism today, where it's hard to know exactly what's a reserve power and what's a delegated power. Where does the federal government stop and states begin? That line has become very blurred. With cooperative federalism, the federal government and the states often share the costs and the administrative responsibilities of policies. The biggest reason for that blurring of the line has been the increase in grants and aid, federal money given to the states. What the federal government has done to gain more power is actually quite clever. There are all these areas that they technically don't have the ability to make policy in. So what they do is they offer a whole bunch of money in the form of grants to the states. And they say, hey, listen, we know you guys want this bag. If you do, come and get it. But by the way, when you get that money, just make sure you follow these rules that we set. That's the big idea picture. So now let's get into the specifics. First up, categorical grants represent federal money given to the states for a specific purpose. So Congress says to the state, here's $50 million, but you have to use it on new school construction. The state probably says yes because they get that money, but they have to do exactly what Congress tells them to do with that money. About 90% of all federal grants to the states come in the form of categorical grants. Congress likes these grants because they tell the states exactly what to do, increasing federal power. Just as important, the grants often include conditions of aid or incentives. This refers to what states must do to get the money in the first place. They're technically optional, but states love to get that bread. A classic example of this came in the 1980s when the Reagan administration wanted all the states to raise their drinking age to 21. Thing is, states, not federal government, sets drinking ages through their police power. So Congress made raising the drinking age a condition of aid to continue receiving transportation grants. States had to choose between letting 18 to 20-year-olds drink legally or getting that government cheese. Breaking news, the states chose the money. Congress can also issue mandates, which can be either funded or unfunded. It's a specific rule of what states must do regardless of whether or not the federal government gives them money. So this isn't a do this if you want to get the money type of thing. This is simply do this, you must comply with us because we told you so. Perhaps unsurprisingly, states don't really like mandates, especially unfunded mandates, because they're losing power and they have to pay for the thing that the federal government is making them do. A classic example is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which included an unfunded mandate requiring states to make all public buildings, think of things like schools and courthouses, wheelchair accessible. It's not that the states are necessarily against disabled people, it's that that's just a really big bill the states just got from the federal government and they had to pay all of it themselves. Next, block grants are money the federal government gives the states, but this time it's for a broader purpose. So instead of saying, alright, this is money that must be spent on new school construction, it's for a broad area like education. So the states have more discretion. They could use that money to build a new school, but they could also use it for textbooks or hiring teachers or whatever they want to do within education. Notice that they cannot do literally anything with the money. They couldn't use the money for highways or transportation, but states like this because at least they have more discretion. And in the 1970s and 80s, there was something known as revenue sharing. It no longer exists, but it's on the course outline, so you need to know that it's where the federal government would give money to the states with no strings attached. No conditions, just here's the money, do whatever you want to do with it. Obviously the states really like that, but it no longer exists. Okay, again, let's big picture this. The federal government uses grants to gain power in areas that they aren't constitutionally in charge of. Think of things like education, health, and welfare. For the states, there's a trade-off. They love getting that federal money because, think about it, they get the benefit of spending that money without actually having to raise taxes themselves. So that's a pretty good deal for the states. They don't like those conditions of aid though because of the rules that they have to follow in order to get the money. So they lose some power, but they get money. That's the trade-off. Next video we'll talk about another way that the federal government has gained more power at the expense of the states. So I hope you'll be back. Until next time, this has been a La Money production. Thanks again for watching, and you already know, but I hope you've at least checked out the Ultimate Review Packet. You can preview Unit 1 for free, so what are you waiting for? And I will see you in the next video.